hooked up?
I mean, that's a loaded question. It's very, so I have the drums are all mic'd up. You know, I have all my mics
Right.
and I got my overheads up here. So I got 2 overheads. I got a close mic on each drum, and that's all running to the mixer. Then I have the mixer sending, Matt's coming in. I have the mixer sending each of those microphone signals to my converter, which is under the mixer under here.
I understand everything you're saying.
Yeah, and then the converter, of course, connects to the computer. You know,
Right there you go. Okay, I got it. So and then you have the software like that you use, Logic, Lala AI, all of that.
Yeah, all that stuff. You know, depending on what you want to do. Okay. So
okay.
I'm going live to Instagram this time. This time when I go live to Instagram, everybody should be able to hear everyone. So when you guys are talking, I think I set it up right because I spent like the whole morning trying to wire this up so it all works.
All right, I'm going to sit back and listen. I think other people are signing on. I let you take care of it.
No, I don't know about this time. I had a bunch of people reach out to me and be like, you know, the 7 o'clock time slot was so late. Is there any way you could do it a few hours earlier? So we're trying 4 o'clock on Sunday. It might be the kind of thing where everybody's busy on a Sunday and nobody shows up. So it might who knows how many people it's going to be. So it might be just
I'm here.
Hey, Matt, I see you. You're here. I can see you. Can you see me? Good.
Oh, and Skinny George, he's great. Skinny.
I know. Did you check him out? Awesome.
Yeah. Listen, his hands, rudiments on a practice pad. He has articulation. He is clean. He has great execution. And I'm talking about when he's flying really fast. I mean, anybody could do it slow. He's flying super fast, super clean, great execution, real articulate. I tried to keep up with him in paradiddles in one of his videos, and he smoked me. He smoked me.
He smokes me. You know, there's times where I try to play along to it, and I'm like, gotta be kidding me. He was doing like a Flam 5s video a breakdown. A Flam 5 is like a 5-stroke roll like that, but you put a flam in front of it, which is very handsy.
That's hard. Yeah.
Like that, right. But he was doing them like that, and I was like, oh man.
Yeah, he's fast. He has a lot of flam workouts that I've seen the same exercises being demoed by Steve Gadd, actually. But Skinny George is taking them to a new BPM.
He's a drum corps guy. I mean, I don't know if he marched with the Blue Devils or he was telling me a story about it. I don't know if he auditioned for the Blue Devils, got into the line, but ended up not marching for some reason, I think is the story he told me. But if you get into the line for the Blue Devils, which is the Drum Corps International, have you ever heard of the Drum Corps?
Yeah, I've heard of them. Yeah.
Okay, DCI is like the top level of marching. And the Blue Devils is like one of the top 3 drum corps in the world. So I mean, you get into that line, you got to be serious. Like you got to.
I have heard of them. I've seen them when there was old when you had to buy a video cassette VCR.
Yeah,
and there was VCRs that had them recording along with. Listen, it's funny. You just did one of your videos, a Yellow Jacket song, Cape Town Shuffle.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And I got a lot out of that video, a real lot. I told you I'm getting into beat displacement. And that opened up my eyes and displacing a backbeat in a halftime shuffle. I would have never realized, you just take one of the ghost notes, one of the E's, and whack it. And there's your new backbeat. You have to shift your kick drum pattern also. I'm doing the old Purdy one. Ba-boom, boom, ba-bop, ba-boom, boom, ba-bop. So when you change the backbeat, you got to know that I'm trying to stay with boom, 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 ba-boom, boom, boom. But it moves also. So it's tricky. But that video, I loved that.
Yeah.
What were you saying before that? We were on the Blue Devils, Skinny George.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, his hands are just, if you're into the drum corps world, he's a tenor drum player too. It's why he plays match grip. He doesn't play in the traditional. He plays here, you know, and it's like
I saw
around, right. He's moving around he's even got a drum corps pad.
The practice pad with all the I saw that.
He can move around and do all that. So like I said, it's a pretty heavy thing. You know, also Dorothea Taylor, which I was hoping, I was talking to her before. I don't know if she can make it down for this live. But if she jumps in on the call, that would be awesome because I really want to meet her like in person.
Wow.
There's a bunch of guys on here, you know. But Matt, are you there? Did I lose
You're
Matthew?
doing beat displacement as good as anybody I see on YouTube. I saw your shorts where you did the rule the world. That seemed to become some kind of challenge that went viral. So everybody was doing that. Everybody that did that was a killing drummer. Then you did a couple of others. I mean, I've heard you do them, and you're good at it. I hope to be able to that's hard. You get used to the backbeat in the normal spot. Right. And then you forget where to do listen, I'll forget it. I'll do it 100 more times till I get it down.
Yeah, you got it, man. You got it. But cool, man. Well, thanks for joining in. Matt, what's going on, buddy? How you doing?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
Cool, great. So yeah, cool. This is really cool.
Yeah, this is good.
I'm trying to do the live thing.
Yeah, I know. It's tough. It's a tough thing to work out. There's a lot of technical stuff. At least you guys, I see the guys on Instagram are saying, you can hear everybody. That's good. So that's kind of a good start. I think on the last one I did, you couldn't hear the other side because I didn't have it wired up right. So you can only hear me and not everybody. But now you can hear everybody. The difference is on that one we had like 20 people, and now there's only like 3 people showing up on the lesson side of it. But Matt, did you check out the lessons that I put out so far?
Yes, I figured out the app. So I think that's gonna be awesome because I used to be, I guess, an email list and the website. Right. And I think you could go on like an iOS or like an iPad and go on the website that way. But the app, I couldn't really get my account fixed up, but now it's all good.
Right. Now, once you have an app,
I'll definitely try to be active on the community. Yeah.
Without a doubt. Yeah, man. Start posting your stuff because I want to see you. I want to see you playing. I want to see you doing. How you doing with recording? Because I know recording is something that.
Right. So this is the shed actually, and I kind of have a lot of gear out. The drum set, I don't know if you can see it back there.
Cool.
But
yeah, looks great.
Oh yeah, there's the kit.
There it is. Cool.
And
you outside the house, you're in your own separate spot. Is that what's happening?
It used to be our shed and then we just put stuff in it.
Oh, good. That's a good deal.
But it's kind of like just an extra space. And I guess I had a question because I've been practicing out here as long as the neighbors don't care.
Right.
And I was really thinking about my left hand, and I got really good at like ghost notes and playing, I guess, a lot of those like funk backbeats and just more of the groovy stuff. And then I also want to make my left hand stronger because sometimes the doubles are pretty weak, or if I want to do doubles, they just don't come out with that like volume.
Right.
And even like maybe I could play open-handed, and instead of doing the hi-hat with the right, I do it with the left.
Do you do that? Do you find that you're doing that?
Maybe it's something to work on, but also like I think you do it too. You have a second hi-hat on the right, and maybe that's a cool idea. That opens up a lot of more possibilities.
Well, yeah, I mean, just because it gives you that open vibe, right? If you're over here, you could kind of move around the drums like Carter Beauford does that from Dave Matthews, right? Because he plays with that open hand, that lefty lead, but on the righty kit. So it kind of leaves him open to do all interesting things. He's a very weird cat if you ever watch him play. The way he plays is so unique because he does the lefty on the righty kit. And everything is kind of like turned around the way he plays. But yeah, you could kind of get that just by having the 2 hats,
Right.
I've always liked that open vibe.
Yeah, hey, tell Matt I want a pair of X hats so bad it's crazy. I've never had them. I once sat down on some guy's kit at a big outdoor party. He invited me up to jam with the bass player. I think the drummer really wanted to take a break. He had X hats. I found myself on them more than I should have been even.
Right.
But I really would love to have Matt's absolutely right. Second hi-hat, X hats.
If you're doing the double pedal thing, you have a close while you're doing that kind of thing. It kind of makes it easier to do that kind of stuff.
Or my buddy,
yeah, go ahead, Matt.
In jazz band, he plays with like he always learned. He's a righty, but he just always played his backbeat or lefty, like a lefty would. Okay. And on the righty setup. So then maybe that's just something to learn. So you have that like that drummer brain, and you could really like just be better with all the coordination.
Well, absolutely. I mean, if you look at the Gary Chester book, you and I have done the Gary Chester book in the past when you were, in private lessons. His whole thing is setting up like a righty setup and a lefty setup. So when you go through his material, you have that like right lead, left lead, and he makes you do everything righty, just like he makes you do everything lefty. I generally like to teach my students the whole righty system first, and then we'll go back and do lefty. I mean, I love the idea of doing it all at once, but sometimes it's cumbersome for a new student to have to learn lefty when they're not using that. It's not something that they're doing, but that's a great thing to do. I mean, I keep another set over here that's completely lefty. I turn the whole thing around.
Oh, great. And even, like I'll play a lick that I can get pretty great with the timing and everything righty, and then all right, let's try lefty, and it just doesn't work.
That's the thing. And everything going through exercises, doing jazz stuff lefty, it's not gonna have the same swing and it can be as good at
right. No, I would never do that.
Right. but that could be cool. I mean,
maybe one day, but
yeah, the worst thing you can do is try it and suck. And that's what you're going to do with anything. Any exercise that you take out, especially if you really challenge yourself like that, you're going to kind of suck in the beginning. And it's all right to suck.
Yeah.
When you're practicing suck. On the app, if you look at some of the exercises, I'm doing it all live. I'm doing the whole thing live. I mean, some of them are old. Some of them from like 2014. I was recording those. I have hair. But like I mess up, especially when I'm going fast and stuff and I'm talking, I'm trying to like give the lesson as I'm doing the practice. And I'll you get tongue tied. But I leave it because that's all part of the practice, recovering from mistakes and going through it. If you watch other guys online, like when Tommy Igo does his challenges, his 100-day challenge, or he'll screw the pooch. He'll do something and everything falls apart and he jumps back in. That's practice.
Yeah. Dazed and Confused. I got a little bit too into it.
Okay.
And I think it was like the main riff with those triplets.
Sure.
And the time is a little bit weird, like with the time signature. And I think I just kind of got off and then just looked at my friend, the guitarist, and we fixed it. But he was like, uh-oh.
Sometimes you got to do that. All right. Very cool. Well, thank you guys for joining me. Like I said, it's a little bit light on the workshop side of it, but let's look at Instagram over here and see how is everybody doing. Let's see how many people we got on. We got a bunch of eyeballs on right now. And hey guys, how we doing? I'm new to the Instagram live and all these the social media live things. So I'm going to start doing it more. And again, I apologize for last time not having the volume set up that you could hear everybody interacting. The last session was really cool. We had a lot of great people. So we might have to go back to that later time slot, and maybe just the weekend's not a great time to do it. But hey, it's all about the learning curve, right? Does anybody here on Instagram have any questions for me or anything that they want me to talk about? I'm looking at the feed right now. So I'm seeing a lot of people join, a lot of people waving, which is cool. How about you guys? As far as this past lesson, so this was lesson 2 of my workshop. And again, for you guys on Instagram, if you want to join the workshop, it's going to be happening all of the lessons are, hold on, let somebody in. All the lessons are for my email list. So you have to be on the email list to join. Go to the link in my profile bio and join my email list. And you can be on this. Oh, look, there's Angelo. Angelo's back. Wow, it's super early for you. It's like 6 o'clock, right?
Yeah.
Have you started your practice day yet?
No, on my second coffee.
Oh, okay. Good, that's it.
It's a bit dark and a bit cold. So.
Yeah, I can see that. You don't even have the sun up. Well, God bless you. Somebody else from Melbourne actually emailed me and said, Jay, I want to come to the live today, but in Melbourne, it's like 6 a.m. So that's how I knew it was already 6 o'clock. I was like, well, yeah, get your butt up. And he's like, oh, well, I'm still up now answering your first email. That means I haven't even gone to bed yet. So it is what it is. So this one might be a little bit of a bad time slot because at 4 o'clock. So far we got the 3 of you guys in here and everybody on Instagram, but not doesn't seem like it's a great live time. But what can you do? That's how we find out. Did you go through the newest lesson, Angelo? Are you going through the workshop or are you just on the app?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, fabulous.
Oh, thank you. Cool. Do you have any questions regarding that lesson?
Well,
now, by the way, everyone on Instagram can hear you now. I set that up. So now people on Instagram can hear what you're saying. Just giving you a fair warning.
I just think there was wonderful words of wisdom there, like and the fact that you're never too old. And it, you know, like, as you know, I tend to, I'm my worst enemy myself.
That's all.
You know?
That's all of us.
You know, and you want to be the best. You know you can do better, but age and physicality, you know, that suffers.
I mentioned you in that lesson. I mentioned you in there. I actually said, you know.
Yeah, I know.
So everyone that did watch that lesson, Angelo is the guy I was talking about. But in spite of that physical issue, I mean, man, you made some great strides with practicing. I know you don't think so, but I've seen your hands since then, and you could definitely see the balance of what you're doing.
Well, it's just, look, as you know, as everyone knows, like I started 4 years ago. And literally 4 years ago, even though I had played for many years in bands, I never knew what a paradiddle was. I had no idea. I never played. I just played.
Right.
You know, I faked it until I made what's that called? Yeah. So that accents, the accents, the areas, the oh god, I'm half asleep. The accents, the sticking, the stages that you use in your learning has just been immense in 4 years. It's you know, the knowledge that I've gained in those 4 years that I didn't even know for the past 40 years before. Seriously, it just
all that stuff.
they just opened my eyes. As I said the other day, we didn't have drum teachers in those days. We couldn't afford a drum kit.
Right.
You know, there were no drum teachers. There were no books. You know, and the internet and being able to have you there every day has just changed. It revolutionized my learning.
Wow.
And the ability to learn. You know, yeah. Anyway,
would you mind for everybody that's on Instagram and everyone that's here, and welcome. What's on the kids' your names? Let's see it. Hey, how we doing?
Well, look like I've got a hunchback. It is because I've got a hunchback.
Well, they can't see you. They can only hear you. We can see you in this group. But would you mind telling everybody, since I brought up your story in the lesson, just tell them about your surgery and how that impacted your playing, because I think that's important for everyone to.
When I was playing in a band, and my teaching is actually my background is in teaching in product design, which is basically the old, what I don't know what you guys call it there, but like woodwork, metalwork. So I found out was as I was holding various tools, my hands at night would just go absolutely pins and needles, numbness. I couldn't sleep. Anyway, when I was playing in the band, and I used to play in a Greek band, so our sets were literally 2 hours long, a set, if not longer. And as I was playing, because I'm holding a stick in, my grip was too tight, obviously, I was getting pins and needles. I could hardly hold onto the stick. So I thought, oh no, something's wrong here. So off I went to the surgeon, and I had carpal tunnel surgery on both wrists.
Wow.
Both wrists.
Nightmare. Every drummer's nightmare.
Yeah. So I used to wear like a brace in the healing, and I used to go to the gig, and I used to play like this.
Right. Like the wrist was like locked in a brace while he's trying.
The wrist was locked in a brace. It was just anyway. So I never learned how to recover properly. I don't know if you know that Thomas Lang has in fact had carpal tunnel surgery, and he's a monster on the drums.
Yeah. You know, not to say that Thomas has got bad form. It certainly doesn't. But I'm sure there's probably stuff he was doing, just like myself when I was younger, where you're holding the sticks in an awkward way and then you're practicing. It does damage. I probably did damage before I corrected my form, because I was playing for 13, 14 years before I corrected those issues. And if I had kept on going that way, forget it. My hands would be destroyed now. But I know guys, you know, we talked about Frank Bellucci and he talked about Morello. that play with that natural form, and you could play forever, and never have a problem if you're always staying in that natural place. But so many of us are in that twisted, awkward place, and it's not wrong. It's just not natural. And if it's not natural, it could develop problems down the road. So I'm not knocking anybody that has that form, but it's one of those things. Somebody's microphone is on and it's feeding back. Is that Glenn? Is that you that's got your mic on?
I don't think so.
Yeah, it is. If I can hear you.
Okay, what's it doing?
Go onto the bottom. There's a little microphone icon where you hang up. Can you see the little microphone icon? And just click that. And
I don't have any symbols at the bottom. Hold on.
Yeah, if you mouse.
Okay, I got it.
Got it?
Go ahead.
It'll mute you until you're ready to talk. That way we don't hear your background noise. Okay, because I was hearing me in your microphone. Okay, good. Excellent. Yeah, so Angela, thank you so much for sharing that, because that is such a common tale, amongst drummers. And now you didn't get it from drumming. You got it from doing your tool work, right? But still, it impacts your playing. So tell us a little bit how that impacted your playing.
Well, it's limited me in speed.
Okay.
So I get to a certain BPM in practice, and then it just doesn't want to go any further. I just cannot seem to go any further. But what Jay's done is he's given me exercises where I can, learning to develop other muscles, other avenues of trying to increase that speed. Now, look, at 65 years of age, playing in a band is no longer a goal of mine. I don't really want to play in a band, and but plus I'm too lazy to lug. Who wants to lug? Seriously. But what I've done is, I've been realistic, and I've said, okay, well, I can't play songs that are, super fast anymore. So I choose songs that suit my ability, and I'll enjoy that. I still can't play. I'd love to be able to play the Rosanna Shuffle. And I had my sister here the other day, and I was talking about my frustration of playing the Rosanna. So I can't get the tempo. She said, well, turn the tempo down on the bloody computer. And I thought, I never thought of that. I don't know how to play the Rosanna Shuffle,
you can do, without a doubt. Or go to a slower shuffle. Rosanna is a pretty fast shuffle, but do Fool in the Rain or something like that, or Home at Last, or Babylon Sister or something like that. That's the real Purdy shuffle. They're not quite as bad. They're not quite as fast. And that's a great way to start. And you could keep pushing the tempo. And a lot of that with the shuffle, you could find ways around. And the last lesson, someone brought up Moeller. We were talking about the Moeller method. And he was saying, I don't know if the Moeller method it's really only for chops. It's for stuff like that. I mean, when you're doing that shuffle, that's a Moeller whip. I mean, you're doing an upstroke and a downstroke. That's all the shuffle is. And then inside of this triplet rhythm. So if you could get that. Now I'm also doing that with my fingers. You see that? I'm putting it here in that kind of flow. So that's almost like a push-pull. So I'm taking, instead of the whole wrist motion, it's finger motion. That might be where you're having problems, because you don't have that finger push. But if your fulcrum is loose, you could get it in the wrist, and you could still push that wrist pretty fast if you develop it. Now, again, I'm not you, so I can't feel that depending on the extent of your injury. The other thing that you could do, in that kind of situation, there's always ways around it. You can't get the shuffle that way, where you're doing the two notes. The shuffle isn't that pattern. This does not mean shuffle. Shuffle is just triplet. It's the dum, ga ba, ga boom, the ba, the dum, the ba, or the dum, ba dum, ga ba. So this is a shuffle. That's a shuffle. And I'm just playing quarter notes. See what I mean? Just like in jazz. This isn't a jazz beat by itself. This is a jazz beat. See what I mean? It's not about exactly the notes you're playing. It's about the swing that you're giving it. That's what makes it that feel. So again, if you had to play Rosanna with a band and you couldn't do all that stuff, you could do. And just play it that way and still get it. You know what I mean? There's ways around it if the physicality is an issue. So just something for you guys also online who are watching this. There's always ways around this stuff. It's easy to get locked into one thing. And there's so many things in drums that are not one thing. You know, the only finite thing I could think of in drums is rhythmic values. Like a 16th note is always a 16th note, a quarter note is always a quarter note, an eighth note is always an eighth note. And their values never change. It's like money. The value doesn't change. The context could change. The time signature could change. All that stuff could change, but the values don't. Pretty much everything else in music is completely subjective. so you could find ways around that stuff. The biggest challenge I see online with comments on videos a lot of times is that idea of one thing. And you pointed out, Angelo, in one of our last calls. For you guys that don't know, Angelo is part of my app. So we do a weekly call, and he's like on the call every week. We were talking about the time signature that I did. I did guess the time signature, which is a total like trick on the whole community, right? This whole guess the time signature thing, because it's like it's pretty much like I'm trolling everybody, because there really is no time. You said it in your comment. You said you can't really guess the time signature because it's subjective, and that's the lesson. That's what you have to understand. Time signatures are subjective. Now, yes, the composer could decide and say, this is the time signature, and that's on the music, and that's what it is. But if there's no time signature given, or it's like something that somebody's just jamming on, time signatures are subjective. You get to decide, and you're in command of it. So it could be really whatever you want, so long as you figure out a way to make it feel a certain way, you know? And that's true of everything. So going back to what we're talking about with technique, it's not just getting locked into one thing. It's trying to find as many solutions as you can to make that kind of thing happen. Okay. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us, Angelo. I know it's a personal subject, you know, so I appreciate that. Dom, is that your name? Did you just join us? Who just joined us? Unmute. Yep, that's you. Yeah, introduce yourself. Let's see what we got here. Oh, hold on. We did hear you for a second. Nope, we don't hear you. How we doing here on Instagram, guys? Okay, he's setting up his microphone. Anybody got any questions for me on Instagram right now that are watching? If anyone has any questions, go ahead and throw it in. I know it's kind of hard. Someone had said something about hands and feet. We addressed that a little bit. But again, for all you guys that are on Instagram that are watching, if you want to be part of the actual interaction here that we're doing, join my mailing list. The link's in my bio. Definitely jump on. Are we ready? We figured out? Okay. Yeah, unmute. We could hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Got you now. There we go. Beautiful.
Okay. My name is Sebastian. I'm from Mexico City.
Hello. Hi, welcome. Awesome. Okay. I saw Dom up there, and that's the only one I wasn't sure. Good. Cool, man. Tell us about yourself. What's going on?
Well, I've been drumming for about 3 years now. I've been drumming for longer because I learned when I was 16, but I didn't really push myself towards learning. And then something and turns in life happened. I was in a band with a couple of the members were my best friends. One of them passed away.
Oh man, sorry.
Thank you. That was about 25 years ago, and music went with him.
Okay.
So I stopped for 25 years. I just remained playing guitar, just playing the same songs, never really dedicating myself to music, until 3 years ago when the lockdown hit. My wife had the idea got the idea into my head to return to drumming. So I heed her proposal, and she's been very supportive with me. So I said, are you really sure what you're saying? Because a beginning drummer is a nightmare. And she said, yeah. So here I am. I consider my restart as my real starting point, because what I remember from my first stage in drumming is just coordination and a bit of limb independence.
Sure.
But not tempo, the pulse. I was completely lost.
Okay.
So I've been struggling with that. I'm not a young guy anymore, so learning has been a bit slow, but I think I'm getting there.
Okay.
I think if this is a language, I would be somewhere around B1. No,
Okay. Yep.
I'm an intermediate drummer. I just got there. I read music. I think that has sped up the process quite
Sure.
a bit.
Do you take any formal lessons? Have you had any formal?
Yeah, I am taking formal lessons right now with a professional drummer.
Great.
Well, with a couple of them, but more seriously with he's a session drummer. He doesn't play for a particular band, but
Sure.
for many, with a variety of styles. He is in the industry, so he's very hard to catch. He's always touring, or always having presentations. So whenever he says, "Hey, I have some free time," I just run to like, give me all the homework you can give me.
That's great. Yeah.
And in betweens, I'm taking courses whatever I can, such as yours. Thank you very much for this workshop, Jay.
You're very welcome. Very welcome. Did you are you all caught up on the 2 lessons that we have up there now?
I finished the first, and I haven't. I am quite thrilled with the paradiddles, with the formal and informal. I never realized that actually my teacher is a formal drummer.
Okay.
My previous teacher is an informal drummer. So I think I have both schools without noticing.
Right. And we talked about that the last live. That's a very common thing. I mean, you're going to find your way to those styles, whether you realize it or not, if you keep practicing and playing.
Yeah.
And both drummers are usually doing a combination if they don't realize. Usually when you're getting faster to a certain level, you have to kind of switch to informal. It has to happen just for you to get there. You know, your brain, your body has to find that physicality.
Yes.
So even guys that play in the drum corps, we talked about Skinny George, when he gets to a certain speed with his paradiddles, there's a certain amount of informal that he's using. So I mean, what I recommend, of course, is really learning them, really getting into each one individually, and because that really develops that touch. So spending time on those that's an invaluable thing. Matthew, you got your hand raised. What do you got, buddy?
Oh, okay. So, Dom, your story kind of, struck a chord with me. That was really cool about, more about the pandemic, less about drumming. With just, even when I raised my hand now, it kind of reminded me of doing all these Zooms and online school for those like 2 years, and I'm still doing some online school. And I think that this platform was, and all platforms, like in social media, I don't want to say a good thing came out of the pandemic, but I think that we kind of have the technology and the resources to really get better, and also just connect from people all around the world. I think that this is being recorded, so I'd love to just go back and hit rewind and just check it out, because then I'll just always have it. And it's not like, oh, I sat here and it was cool, but it just flew out of my head, and now I'm gonna go get McDonald's.
Yeah.
So
that's
I
it.
was just thinking
I was saying that with a bunch of my, the fact that you can record the lessons and you can go, I never recorded my drum lessons growing up. I never had that. That was something I never did because, it was always live. It was always in the room with the teacher. And that is a great way to learn. Don't get me wrong. I think having the student there with you and being able to manipulate them and grab their hands and see what they're doing. It's the best experience. It's definitely the top level of teaching anything. The next step is what Matt's talking about, is the fact that you can get online and that I could teach drummers all over the world through this medium. And the pandemic did kind of bring us that, it was a thing before that, but this really normalized it and made it so much more comfortable doing it this way. So I think next to the one-on-one in-person lessons, this has got to be the next best thing. And there's nothing better than one-on-one drumming. There's nothing better than you sitting with the teacher working through it. I mean, I have my app, I have all my stuff out there, and there's all kinds of online programs, but nothing beats working with the teacher. Working with the teacher is the best thing that anybody can do in terms of getting the drumming better. And I'm also a big fan of working with many teachers. I think you should work with all different teachers. Everyone's got a different thing. Skinny George was in our call on the last live that we did. Very different kind of teacher than me. But that would be a beautiful thing, going to him for something like just working on the hands or working on the drum corps mentality, more of that formal style that he's in. And he's got that blazing fast. He's got that all completely worked up. So yeah, I love the fact that the internet has given us a lot of diversity, a lot of choices in terms of how you can study. There's a double-edged sword to that. And the double-edged sword is that sometimes there's so much information that it gets a little overloaded, So what I'm trying to do with my app and the things that is streamline everything, give everyone a clearer place to visit, so they could go in and really focus on the things that are important. Same thing with this workshop. That's why in lesson 1, we were just talking about just worrying about those foundations and really getting those foundations right. Okay. Do we have any questions on this past lesson or the lesson before that you guys want to talk about before we move on to a different topic here, or take some questions from Insta? Anybody have anything specific? Go ahead.
Yeah, something that I've been struggling, I guess, is normal at this stage of my path is for those there are people who are born with a natural talent, right? And they follow a different process, and they can express their feel very easily without necessarily having the great technique. And there are others, such as myself, that are born with absolutely no talent, and we have to build it very slowly, right? How can, once we start getting some technique, some vocabulary, some ways of expressing,
Sure,
how can we effectively use them to connect that feel that we have
right,
with the language we're learning?
and it's funny you should ask that question, because that's lesson 2. when you go into the workshop, definitely take lesson 2, because
I have to take them.
But I'll talk about it here. Absolutely. And yes, because that is, so lesson 1 was more focused on technique, right? Like rhythm, accents, and sticking, and really ironing those 3 things out. If you break everything down to the least common denominator, we have rhythm, accents, and sticking, and really, really understanding those 3 things. Pros, professional guys that do this for a living and are like teachers and are touring and doing that, they have that dialed in to the point where now they're not thinking so much of the physical vocabulary, they're expressing it. Okay. And that's how much you have to practice technique. You have to practice technique so much that when you're playing and performing, the last thing you're thinking of is technique. If you're playing in front of a band and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to do a paradiddle, it's going to come out like garbage. It's going to come out like right, left, right, left, right, left, left. You can't be thinking of that. These guys that you're seeing online that are whipping around the kit, they ain't thinking about every little sticking that they're doing. They're only thinking about one thing, how they're feeling. Literally, how they're feeling. And I'm talking about the emotion. Are they angry? Are they happy? Are they sad? They're making that happen on the drums. Okay. Now, yes, the technique has to be there to make that happen, but you feel the energy that they feel. And that's where you want to get to. And yes, you have to be crazy, crazy with technique before you get to that point. And it's a path. It's a journey. It's not like one day you wake up and you're just there. It's a slow process. Going back to what you said about talent versus hard work, nature versus nurture. Yes, I've had students that are super, super talented. Matthew up there is super, super. He was one of those super talented kids. Matthew also happens to be a good worker too, which is a very, very rare combination. But
hold up, I just want to say I'm pretty good at jazz now, but for years, like I was terrible at jazz, and try to get into a jazz band. No. Yes. And then I got to be in the good jazz band, and then that was great. And then I got a lot better from that. So like playing out and live, that's like the best practice in my opinion.
Right. Now this kid, when he was like 8 years old, he was like reading like level 6 high snare drum solos and stuff. And he was just one of these kids that just picked it up really, really fast. I was like you. I was not naturally talented at all. I had to work for everything. I had to figure it out. But what that gave me is it gave me the ability to problem solve. It gave me the ability to practice all those things and get into routines and realize what was important and really focus on those things.
Give you the process.
Yes. And that's the key. The key is having the process. The talent is great, but talent only takes you to a certain point, and then there's a ceiling. And I see it with every naturally talented student. The guys, they come in, the challenge with them is that they're used to things coming easy for them. The second that stops, the second they get to that level where it ain't going to be easy now it's like it's past natural talent. Now we got to add that 4th limb. Now we got to do that extra thing that they're not used to doing. Now it's work, but now they don't know how to do the work because everything just came so easily. Oh, the groove is right there. The time is right there. The feel is right there. But now they had that left foot and everything feels like dog shit. They don't want to do that because they have to take a step back in their playing. Does that make sense? It's so hard sometimes to get those naturally talented guys to go past that ceiling. You know, it's like the good high school drummer who's great in high school, and then you see him 10 years later and he's an accountant, you know, because he peaked in high school and that was it. You gotta have both. You know, I mean, if I had a choice, I would take nurture over nature any day. Personally.
Yeah, actually, that's something like that happened to me. I was 2 years ago. I was taking a diploma course. It was called perfecting the drums or something like that, and it was with a very, very good naturally talented drummer from my country. And what the best I got from that course was contacts.
Okay.
But not really drumming. And I was asking myself why, because this guy is really good. The thing is, he's a prodigy,
Right.
not a teacher.
Right.
So he can show amazing things, but he cannot like transmit them easily because he doesn't have the process. One day, he got sick or had a gig or something, so he couldn't give the class. So the substitute teacher came in, who's actually my current teacher, because this guy was a nurture teacher, a guy that didn't have talent and had to grow up learning and reading and practicing and working like crazy.
Right.
So, and he was very demanding. Whilst the other one was more lenient and more easygoing, and I needed somebody who was kicking my butt all the time.
Sure.
And who was giving me like a clear process to follow, because I needed that. I needed organization, and I needed something from scratch. Now, you know, and I think that was much better for me than I was initially like enthralled and mesmerized by the talent of the other guy.
Right.
But then I realized that I was not going to learn a lot, and he was like like an avalanche of knowledge. You know, you could ask a question and you would get 1,000 answers, and then you were like, what was my second question?
Right.
No,
Right.
and this other guy is like, we're going to see one thing today,
That's it.
and we're going to focus on that one thing today, and you're going to repeat that one thing for a month.
Right.
So
that's the other side. That's the other side of it. Right?
Yeah, completely the other side. But I like both styles, but I feel more comfortable with the more structured process.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, one of my biggest critiques on drum lessons, because I had a lot of teachers. I've studied with a lot of guys, a lot of different personalities. I've definitely had those teachers that like you sit down and it's like you're hanging out with them for an hour. You're not really doing anything. It's like whatever he was kind of has in his mind in that moment is what you're doing, and it's changing every week. And there is no path. There's no progression. I don't like to be that kind of teacher. It's not the way I teach. It's not the way I learned. You know, I had a lot of bad habits growing up. Because I did study with a lot of teachers, but I really kind of focused on things that I wanted to do, not the things that were important when I was young. And that screwed me up in college. I'm sure you heard the story that I probably told in the first video if you watched it. For you guys on Instagram that don't know that story, I was a very talented high school drummer. But when I got to college, I realized that I didn't have any of the foundations. I didn't know really any of the important stuff. I sounded very flashy, but I just didn't have any of the good, strong foundations. And it really kind of screwed me up because I went for my college audition and I lucked out. Pretty much I only got the gig at college because an angel was sitting on my shoulder. I did this really flashy drum solo and I just happened to come out in the right spot. And it was just out of blind luck. And the instructors were just like, oh man, we got to get this guy into our department. He's like a prodigy drummer. They thought I was this prodigy when I was completely guessing. When I got into college, they realized I wasn't guessing. Or they realized that I was completely guessing on everything, and they were mad. They were pissed off that they let me into the department, and I really couldn't play. I didn't, present the same way that I did in the audition. So those teachers rode me really hard. My private teacher in college, oof, it was like I always call him my whiplash teacher. He was like the guy that really jumped on me and really, really pushed me. A lot of it was trying to push me to quit. They wanted me out of there, but sometimes you need that kick in the ass. Some students do, some students don't. But because I had to break myself all the way back down and kind of unlearn all of the stuff that I was learning all those years through high school, that taught me how to break it down. That taught me a method. I started realizing, okay, this that I'm doing is not important. This is. Again, back to those three basics: rhythm, accents, and sticking. Those are your three important things. Those are the things where I needed the most focus. And I learned that because I remember going to my first drum lesson with that teacher I was telling you about. And in this lesson, he says to me, "Okay, Jay," he goes, "play me 6/8. Give me a 6/8 beat." So I'm like, all right. So I play him like he's like, good. Now trade 4s in 6/8. And I'm same thing. I'm like, man, I'm going to play 6/8 and I'm going to blow him away with these chops. And I did a couple of rounds and I played my chops and I came back to the groove and I played my chops and I came back and I finished. I looked at him and with this low voice, he goes, "Don't you ever do any of that ever again." Just like that. And I was an 18-year-old kid and this guy was scary. He was like a scary, big booming voice, like scary teacher. "Don't you ever do any of that." Famous guy, so I was like super intimidated already. And I was like, what did I do? And he's like, everything you played was just, no, don't ever do any of that. That's awful. Everything you just did. And I was just like, oh my God, really? He's like, yeah. And the first thing he asked me was like, "Can you tell me what kind of notes you were playing? What notes were you playing there?" And I was like, "Well, I was playing right." No, not right, left. I don't want to hear about it. "What kind of notes are you playing?" And I was like, "Well, I'm playing snare drums." And no, not what you're hitting. "What kind of notes are you playing?" And I was like, 16 notes? "You weren't playing 16 notes." And I was like, he destroyed. That was like my first lesson with him. That was literally what it was like. And I was like, oh my God, like, what am I, and he's like, "You're a college level drummer. You can't tell me what kind of notes you're playing. You can't tell me the rhythm that you're using inside of that phrasing or whatever you call phrasing." He's like, "Buddy, you need to get your shit together." And that was a wake-up call. That was scary. It was certainly, I walked out of that lesson like, but it made me ask some really, really hard questions about, my foundation. Now, again, I've been playing since I'm 8 years old and now I'm 18. It's 10 years later. And I thought I knew this stuff. And apparently I didn't know it as well as I thought I did, so I like to make sure that my students don't have those pitfalls. I like to make sure that they don't get stuck with their pants down in that kind of situation. And it is so common. As I started teaching after college and became a teacher and then started doing it professionally, student after student after student, and guys that were playing 30 years, would come in and I'd ask them that first question that I ask in the challenge, the quiz that I have on my in my email list when you first sign up. I first question, "What is rhythm? Define rhythm." And I'm telling you, like, out of all the drummers I've ever taught, there's been like maybe 3 or 4 guys that nailed that answer. And I think 2 of them were like teachers that like knew because they were already drum teachers themselves. But it's amazing how many people can't tell me in a clear, simple way what rhythm is. And rhythm is our bag. That's what we do. But it's always this long, convoluted, crazy answer. It's never like a simple, clear answer. And I demonstrated that in the first lesson where I put that in there and I showed some of the answers that on social media that people put, not to knock anybody down, but just to show how woo-woo and up in the air these answers are. And it's like trying to sound smart. And it's like the key is making it super simple and super clear. And when your foundation is clear, you could build on it. And it doesn't matter how talented you are. If your foundation is clear, you can build on it if you want it. It doesn't matter about your physical limitation like Angelo. If your foundation is clear, you could just build on that. You can find ways around it, So, and even if you're super talented like Matthew up there, he, like I said, he happened to have a good work ethic too, which is a very, very rare combination when you have a kid that's got both, and takes it up. Those are the guys that really turn into like great, great, great players. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Do you guys have anything else that specific? Because that was a great, topic that you brought up there. So we're kind of coming to the end here, and I don't want to go over like I did last time. Anybody on Instagram have any questions? I see a lot of people joining in, a lot of people hanging out, saying hi to everybody. How we all doing, Instagram fam? If anybody wants to join in on this workshop, again, my link in the bio, link you in. Glenn's got a question. Glenn, go ahead.
Yeah, Jay. Well, you do something I saw you that you're pretty good at. It's a skill unto itself. And I don't know how you start. When you're counting, forget, you're not playing. You're not even holding a pair of drumsticks. You're just counting and snapping your fingers.
Yeah.
Some of those things, some of that is hard to do. I even like spent, I don't know, a year learning conical until I gave it up.
Yeah.
I saw a drummer named Daphnis Prieto
Love that.
give a demonstration. All he had in his hands was 2 clave sticks, and he used his voice.
Yep.
And the polyrhythms and modulations he went through were incredible. And you're kind of doing that when you're counting and snapping your fingers.
Right.
How can that be practiced?
Literally audiation. I mean, conical is great because it gives you that, it's that audiation. You're verbalizing what you're playing. But that could be done in Western music too. That could be done with counting. I mean, you could learn how to count all the rhythms and like say it. This is why, I have a lesson on YouTube where I talk with my beginners when we do the apples and the oranges to start our first drum groove. I caught a lot of flack from a lot of drum teachers because it kind of goes against the grain of how you teach a beginner. Would like to start with just 1, 2, 3, 4 and kind of layer everything on top. But I've always found like the idea of audiating, getting it into your brain and then being able to physically sing it. That's the thing that really makes you understand how to play. And what's great about conical is all the phrasing can be sung. So when you see Daphnis doing that stuff, he could play a clave and then audiate everything that's in his mind. Everything that's in his mind, he can physically do on the kit because he's got it internalized. So I think the goal that you're talking about, Glenn, is being able to connect your counting to your playing, your singing to your playing. It was, who was it? It was, who called it singing? Was it, I think it was John Riley called it singing. When you count or you actually sing along to the phrasing that you're playing. And to me, that's like audiation. That's the thing that really, really helps you translate what you're saying around the drums. So it's not so much like patterns, because people get into paradiddles and stuff like that, and they're just playing patterns. And it's like, but your brain doesn't necessarily think like that. If you think of like a piano player or a horn player or a jazz player, their phrasing isn't right. Think of a melody to a song, any song, a simple song. The Flintstones. There's rhythm and there's melody happening. So if you could audiate that on the drums and make those same things happen, you're going to sound more musical. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about. So the snapping, the counting, there's coordination involved that you got to practice, but being able to have all that together is going to help you, translate that to an instrument. And it's a very, very important thing. Angelo knows from all my lessons and stuff that we talk about. I make them say everything. You got to say everything that you're playing. If you're practicing accents, you're saying all the positions. You're saying down, tap, up, tap, down, tap, up, tap, down, tap, up, tap. You're audiating what you're saying. So you're connecting your brain to your hands. The biggest enemy. Go ahead.
I've spoken to drummers that worked through the Gary Chester book. I think it is New Breed.
Yeah,
and that book makes you use a fifth limb, your mouth.
Right. That's it. And I think he even calls that singing. If you read the beginning of that book, he talks about singing, and he's talking about counting 1 E into 2 E into as you're playing what you're playing. And there's all kinds of ways of incorporating that into the interdependence that you're developing. It's a huge thing, because the biggest enemy of playing any instrument is the whole just feeling it mentality. And I see it all the time. Basically, when I see people that say, I can't really count it, I just feel it. That's basically like a nice way of saying I'm guessing and I don't know what the heck I'm doing. Okay. And I catch a lot of hell for saying stuff like that because it's offensive. People are like, what do you mean? I'm not guessing, I'm feeling. If you're feeling it, you're guessing. Okay. There's a difference between feeling it, the verb, that person's feeling it, versus that guy's got great feel, the noun. Great feel is when you're connected to what you're playing and everything feels great to everyone else and the person playing. Okay. So that's something that when students come to me, whenever somebody says to me, oh, Jay, I don't really understand what I'm doing, I'm just feeling it. Nope. That we cut them off right there. There is no just feeling it here. And the first defense against that is count it. Tell me where you are. Vocalize it. If you can't verbalize it, you don't understand it. It's not in here. And everything with drumming starts with the head. You got to have it up here or nothing's going to happen here. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. How we doing? Guessing versus feel. That's exactly right. That's what Spooky Suede just said that over on Instagram. That is, if you take away one thing from this whole lesson, I mean, that is probably the most important thing. And again, I know it offends a lot of people that are in that, like, oh, I just feel it vibe. And it's on any instrument, not just drums. It's the guitar players that, oh, I'm just feeling it. And they don't really know what they're doing. Great players don't just feel it. They know exactly where they are. They're connected. Going back to Glenn's thing, vocalizing it, singing it, audiation. That's why in teaching, I think audiation is such a huge tool. There's so many times where I say to the student, the exercise is the singing. It's not the playing. Play it, but you have to sing. If you don't sing, you're not doing the exercise. So that is such a huge thing, you know? And on that, I think we're just about at time. Does anybody have anything else to wrap up with? If not, I'm just going to close it up again by saying, if you guys online want to join this workshop, there's a couple of days left. You could backtrack and watch the other 2 lessons on demand. Once this week is done, I'm taking all those lessons down. But for now, everything's up there. So just join the email list, jump in, take my drum foundation quiz, and then jump into the workshop. And we're going to be doing one more live like this. So I'd love to see some of you guys join in and ask me some questions directly. That would be great. But until then, I think we're going to wrap it up. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. And guys on Instagram, thank you so much. Have a great Sunday, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you very much, Jay. See you next time.
Thank you, Glenn. Appreciate you showing up. Thanks, Matt.